Heyo, Omnidogs and Omni Kittens. It's Omnidog here with another edition of Read This, Not That. I have no idea. I think I've made two of these already. I have no idea what I called them. Don't buy this, buy that. Whatever. I'll put April 2022 on this to distinguish it from the other ones. But the idea of this is books that are either like the creator or the material or the character is not something that I cared for, and instead either by that same author something better, or that character there's something better that you should read instead of what I don't like. Now, some people are going to see the books that I say, don't read this, and they're going to say, hey, I love that book. That's great. These books have sold, so somebody likes them, and I worship. I appreciate any comments that you have. Don't mean to offend you. These books just weren't my cup of tea, and there's no manga in here, so I mean, come on, give it up. So here's an example for Read This, Not That. We'll start with the not that portion, and then I'll tell you what you should read instead. I'm a big Harley Quinn fan. Everybody knows that. But there's some books out there that are just not that great. And I'm here to tell you. One of them is the Harley Quinn Rebirth series that started after the Palmiotti and Connor run. Books 1 through 5 by Humphreys. It sends Harley to Apocalypse and mayhem ensues, blah, blah, blah. Every character that we care about, and I'm aware that these are just comic books and not real life, but every character that we care about has a certain voice, and we want to see that voice continued so that we can continue to relate and enjoy that character. I personally did not feel that in this book. I give Sam Humphries credit for trying something new. That's great. I just wasn't feeling it in volumes 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm not a big fan of this. Let me tell you what else I'm not a big fan of, and that is the animated series continuance, the Eat, Bang, Kill Tour Harley Quinn. That doesn't have the same voice as the cartoon, the animated series at all. I didn't care for that. Here are two Harley Quinn things that I loved. The first, I had to read it digitally because I still haven't gotten my copy 4 months later from a certain company. Perhaps if I had ordered from organic priced books and used the code Omnidog for 2% off, and the code Omnidog ship it together for another 5% off if you ship 3 or more books together, perhaps I would have gotten this book. Had I ordered it from organic priced books, I'd have gotten it a week later, 3 days later. I still haven't seen it. So I read it digitally. And this is Let the Healing Begin. I couldn't read it backwards. This is by Stephanie Phillips, and this captures Harley's voice. It's funny. It's lighthearted. Harley wants to kick ass. She makes a pact with Batman that she is going to try and do good, in her words. She wants to make it up for whatever happened. I think it's cleaning up from the Joker War. Now, Riley Rossmo was an interesting choice for this. I personally don't mind Riley Rossmo's drawing, and I think it works here. In the more I look at it, no, I don't want to capture a quick note. What do you? No, get out of there. What the hell? No. So I like Riley Rossmo's art in this. I know he's a little bit maybe divisive, but I feel like he really captures Harley's spirit, her fighting attitude, her goofiness, and Stephanie Phillips nails it. This is a Harley I want to read more of. I want to be invested in this book. Another one that's only on the DC app is Harley Quinn Make 'Em Laugh. And that's great. You guys, if you have the DC app, or however you read your DC Comics online, get Harley Quinn Make 'Em Laugh. It's online only. I love that book. I genuinely love that book. And I love this book. Now let's see if I can pick another book that I didn't care for show up here. I did it. So that's the Harley Quinn chapter. Here's another book that I would suggest you not spend your money on or your time reading. Phantom X Max. Here we have a Max book, which is exciting. Phantom X, who I think is one of the most, if not the most interesting characters, and he's I don't think enough has been written about him. I know he's in the latest X series, and I've enjoyed his exploits there. This was boring. I couldn't tell it was a Max book. This was desultory. It was somniferic. It was boring. It just wasn't. Come on, Phantom X, and you can't give me a good story. So no, don't get this. Now the issue with recommending something with Phantom X or the Max series is the Max series is mostly out of print. So a good Max series to read is The Hood. I love this book. It's out of print, of course, so you can get it. I'll put a link in the description box. You can read it on Kindle. You can read it online somehow. The Hood Max is really interesting and really great. It's about how the Hood gets his powers and explains to me why I bought his action figure. Now I understand how cool a bad guy the Hood is. So you can read this on Kindle, on Amazon. You can look for it. Probably kind of pricey on eBay, maybe. Check eBay. The other book where Phantom X shines, and I think is still the high water mark for his character, is Uncanny X-Force, which is, of course, out of print now. But I checked eBay, and there were copies going for $140. In my opinion, that's not a bad markup. This book will get reprinted, though. I can promise you that. This book will get reprinted in the next 2 years. This is the best Phantom X that's been written by Rick Remender. This is what I want, an omnibus-sized, interesting thing about Phantom X that's new in his world and Eva and everything. So if you want great Phantom X, you can read it online. Marvel Unlimited. Try it. It's great. Everybody knows how great Uncanny X-Force is. So, but specifically for Phantom X, do not get Phantom X Max. That was Phantom X minimum. Didn't dig it at all. Okay, next up. This was a book that I had high hopes for. I think a lot of people were really excited for this book, and it was a bit of a disappointment. And when I say it was a bit of a disappointment, I sold my copies and have to show it to you on my iPad, because I sold Catwoman volumes 1 through... I can't touch this thing without it goofing up. Catwoman volumes 1 through 3 by Joelle Jones. As an artist, she's not a great writer. Or as a writer, she's not a great artist. She did the covers for these, which were beautiful. There is, it's a meandering, disconnected, another dull kind of read. It just was hard to make connections all throughout the book. And it just wasn't interesting at all. It wasn't exciting. I wasn't into it. And it's too bad because one thing you should read by Joelle Jones, I didn't even do any research. I just pulled this out, so I don't know if it's still available, is Lady Killer. It was available in a couple paperbacks. It was available in this library edition. You can read it online. I apologize that I didn't do any research on this one because I just yanked it out at the last minute. Lady Killer's great. She wrote it and illustrated it, and it is awesome about a housewife that's an assassin back in like the early 60s. I love this book. And Joelle Jones, I think that in her defense, that sometimes it's hard for writers to nail characters in the big two. Sometimes it's hard for somebody that's had independent creator-owned success have that translate over into big two comics. Lord knows tons of famous writers have tried X-Men and not done well because of editorial interference, editorial disagreements. I'm thinking of Jeff Lemire with X-Men, Cullen Bunn, Ed Brubaker. Sometimes they just don't. Sometimes it's hard to write big two characters properly. Now, for a Catwoman that's really good, here's somebody that does understand Catwoman, and that's Ram V. The first one's called Return to Alleytown, and he wrote about half to three quarters of this. But this one, he wrote all of it. Look at that cover. That's got to be Jenny Frison. This is volume 5, The Hunt for Poison Ivy. Oh, no, Valley of the Shadow of Death. I was reading the back. Come Home, Alley Cat is the first one. Sorry. And Valley of the Shadow of Death. The Hunt for Poison Ivy. This was riveting. This was fun, interesting, inventive, and I think this is what everyone wanted the first 3 volumes to be. Ram V nails Catwoman. Let me rephrase that. Ram V understands Catwoman and writes her really well. This is a Catwoman I want to follow. I will be reading Ram V's interpretation of her for the rest of the time he wants to write her. This book in particular, volume 5, I loved. The Hunt for Poison Ivy, I thought was brilliant. This was a 5-star book for me. Since this was just half Ram V, half other people, it's like a 4-star. This one's the Catwoman I want to keep reading. And I think people can struggle with Catwoman. I can see that happening. I understand how it happens, but Ram V's is the one you want to read. What's next? I have 2 more. Read this, not that. I love the Hanna-Barbera books, Hanna-Barbera universe, and you should love them too. I'm going to do a video soon on all of them, how to read them, how to get started on them, what to read. Here's what's not to read. Dastardly and Muttley by Garth Ennis. This was hard to follow, weird, made no sense. And I'm not talking Grant Morrison not making sense. This was just somebody, I think, who was, I don't ever want to say Garth Ennis is out of his depth, but I just don't think he understood the characters enough to write them well enough, because this is quite dull, uninteresting, and the only reason I'm keeping it is because I want a full set of Hanna-Barbera, and I already spent the money on it, so I needed to make a full video of Hanna-Barbera comics. So don't get this. Dastardly and Muttley, dull, boring, not into it, sorry. Just didn't dig it. Hanna-Barbera book that's great. Talked about it before. The Jetsons. We all know how great Flintstones and Snagglepuss are by Mark Russell. This is the unsung book of the line, The Jetsons. Jimmy Palmiotti writes a It's not a biting satire like Flintstones and Snagglepuss, but it is a little bit of a commentary on Earth in the future, how they're all living in the air, it just sort of gently covers what they did to the Earth and they live in floating cities above water, and the kids get involved going underwater, finding old interesting relics. There's a disaster headed towards Earth that all the characters are really well written. George is an important person at Spacely's. Jane has a high-ranking position in an interplanetary council. Judy is smart. His boy Elroy, he's really well written too. And they even have an origin for Rosie the robot. Very well written, intellectually challenging, but not preachy at all. It's a book that makes you think, but it doesn't poke you in the chest, make you think. You can just enjoy it because the characters work together to get things solved. I like it. I liked it a lot. It was a fun read. As I said, not preachy or anything. You don't have to worry about that. It's not trying to send a big message. It's trying to send a little teeny message surrounded by really interesting writing and really good art. And I highly recommend The Jetsons. Not Dastardly and Muttley. And the final book in Read This, Not That. We start with the not that again. Batman the World. I know some of you have written to me liking it. And so to those of you, I will just say, this just wasn't my cup of tea. I love the idea, getting different writers from different countries to put their spin on Batman. I think the writers know Batman quite well. It's just that it's an anthology, obviously. You've got different writers from different countries. So each interpretation of Batman, Bruce Wayne, is different. The only problem is only about 2 of the stories are interesting. The rest, I would say, are not interesting. That's a lot that's not interesting. This book, and I know a lot of you out there really cared for this book, and so I'm sorry. It's got the flags of the countries that wrote the Batman stories. First of all, it's hard to write an anthology and get good comics, 10 good comics in a book. I think that's just naturally difficult. I saw it with Batman Black and White. That's an omnibus I sold. Only about 1/3 of those comics were any good. So I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not saying that the international community can't write Batman. I'm just saying this book wasn't the book to use as a showcase for him. I did not find it very interesting at all. And I'm sorry. I know a lot of you love it. And peace and love, peace and love. I'm sorry. Here's an anthology that worked so well. A bunch of the stories brought me to tears. That's Superman Red and Blue. Specifically, Daniel Warren Johnston's story made me tear up. Mark Waid has a brilliant story. There's a Bizarro story in here that's a little hard to follow, but it still is interesting and is fun. If that's the worst thing, it's fun and interesting, but a little hard to follow, big deal. The rest of the stories are fantastic. And as I said, Daniel Warren Johnston's story in particular made me tear up. There are 2 or 3 of these in here that made me tear up. They were so well written. The writers that got, first of all the writers wrote at least very good stories to excellent. So that's why it's worth your time. And the art is great throughout. And the central conceit is that the main colors are red and blue. Like Batman Black and White, the main colors in this are red and blue. The ones that got me choked up, Mark Buckingham wrote a great story. There's Daniel Warren Johnson's story right here. These were heartfelt, without being sentimental, overly sentimental. They give you the importance. All of them seem to rally around the idea that Superman is not only a symbol of hope, but of perseverance, of caring for one another, for the values you instill in somebody. And I thought this book was a home run. I love this book. I can't wait to read it again. In 2 months, when memory fades for me, I'll read it again. It'll be a brand new book. So that's the last one. This you should read. I'm afraid this is a pass for me. So thank you for watching Read This, Not That. I appreciate all my viewers out there. Peace and love, peace and love. Thank you all so much for watching. Remember to go to Organic Priced Books. Use the code Omnidog for $2 off. And Omnidog ship it together for 5% off if you ship 3 or more books together. Omnidog, ship it together. And I've got some other good ideas, so stay tuned in the next 4 months. No, I'm going to try and do a couple over the weekend. Thank you. Peace and love. Peace and love.